Pixar's Inside Out 2 is getting ready to add a handful of new emotions into Riley's psyche that each seems to match one of her already existing emotions, all except one. The only member of Riley's original emotional support team who doesn't seem to have a match or counterpart is Joy. And though that might look like an oversight, it could actually be a really big hint for what's to come. Here's how Riley's lead emotion might just evolve into love in Pixar's Inside Out 2. The first thing to mention about the new emotions from Inside Out 2 is that each one of them seems to be matched with Riley's emotions that already existed in the first movie. Out of everything we know about Inside Out 2, the only certainty is that Riley is getting at least 4 new emotions added to her command center. These emotions are anxiety, embarrassment, ennui, and envy, and not much is known about each of the characters except that they're going to be bringing some big changes with them. That said, after thinking about what each of the new emotions means and comparing them to the characters met in the first movie, there's no arguing that each one is a more specific version of the original emotions. Let's go over each matchup so that there's no confusion going forward. Starting with disgust, who is arguably the most judgmental of Riley's emotions. In a way, disgust and envy could go hand in hand. When someone is envious of someone else, whether they realize it or not, they're being judgmental. You could even argue that when someone is envious, that emotion stems from low self-esteem or a feeling of disgust with themselves. As for fear, the obvious connection or match here would have to be anxiety. In this instant, anxiety is essentially the fear of anticipation. I know there's much more to it than that, but you can't be anxious if you aren't anticipating something to happen, which then causes an internal fear to arise. There's actually a scene in the first film that shows how fear itself can sometimes be anxious. During the scene where Riley says hello to a boy her own age, Pixar gives fans a glimpse into the boy's young mind, and not just fear, but every emotion in his command center is in an anxious panic. Next, we have the matchup of anger and embarrassment, which again seems pretty obvious. Someone can either become so angry that they embarrass themselves or embarrass themselves so much that they become angry. It's a connection that works both ways and is more common than you might think. Last but not least of the new emotions, there's ennui, the feeling of boredom, dissatisfaction, and a sense of the mundane. Ennui and sadness might not be synonymous, but they're pretty close. Both are major signs of other underlying issues like possible depression, and it doesn't matter which one you're feeling, both ennui and sadness have the ability to knock out any will to socialize that a person might have. Now, it's unclear if Pixar is going to use any of these matchups or connections in the movie Inside Out 2, but if they do, it's hard to wonder where Joy's new partner is going to be. Is there more to her story that would prevent her from getting an emotional match? Well, it honestly looks like Joy is going to be alone in her journey once again, but that might actually be a good thing for her. And I'm not talking about her journey back to headquarters with sadness in the first movie either. She obviously wasn't alone there. But if you think back to the beginning of the first movie, joy was the first emotion that Riley felt, which is partly why she became the boss of Riley's psyche. This also means that Joy started her journey alone, even if it was only for like 30 seconds before Riley cried as a baby and sadness arrived. Even while she was working with the rest of the emotions in the first movie, Joy kind of seemed like a loner. She didn't really need anyone's help, and a lot of her talking was her either narrating, thinking out loud, or telling the others what to do. So maybe she doesn't need a matching emotion in the sequel. But what if she became her own match? You see, some fans have come up with a theory that suggests Joy is going to be set on yet another emotional journey that will give her the strength to evolve and become a much stronger emotion. Love. The interesting thing about this theory is that Joy actually showed us in the first movie that she's capable of acting like various emotions even if they didn't directly say it. Throughout the movie, including when Riley was first born, Joy showed that not only did she induce happiness in Riley, but she also made her laugh and was basically responsible for creating Goofball Island. Joy pretty much became anything that she needed to be in order to keep Riley's emotional state happy. So there's no telling what she could become if she was forced to go on another escapade to save Riley's mind. But why would Joy outright change into another emotion like love when she already has control over the aspects of Riley's life like love and happiness? This is where the evolution theory comes in. And interestingly enough, it doesn't only involve joy. According to this theory, every emotion that fans know from Inside Out will go through a change that might result in them becoming these new emotions, if only for a little while. I've already explained how emotions like fear can be connected to and almost synonymous with other emotions like anxiety, so let's take that a step further. Let's consider the idea that these original or base emotions can embody and become other more complicated feelings, much like how in the first movie Joy was shown controlling other emotions like goofiness. This would be a huge twist because fans are definitely expecting to see new emotions intermingling with the core 5, but it could be just as interesting to see them become the new 4, not to mention the fact that fear, sadness, disgust, anger, and joy already showed signs of becoming these new emotions throughout the first Inside Out. A great example of this is when Disgust was watching and subtly judging Riley's new classmates. She spotted a group of kids that she thought had very cool I don't care attitudes. Not only did Disgust act envious over the girls' cool appearance, but she also tried her best to keep Joy from embarrassing them by keeping Riley away. This could have been Pixar showing fans that the core 5 emotions are also in control of the other complicated ones that Riley will experience. When she does, the core emotions could evolve into the new ones, even if it's only temporary. Another example is the countless times that Fear showed literal anxiety, especially on Riley's first day at her new school. Fear showed that he was anxious about almost everything he could possibly think of. He was even worried about what would happen if the teacher called on Riley, which is likely similar to a lot of our first interactions with anxiety. As for Joy, though, this idea of the emotions evolving into more complicated emotions might perfectly explain why she wasn't giving a matching new friend like the rest of the core 5. It's because Pixar didn't want to spoil the surprise that Joy will eventually evolve into the feeling of love in order to help Riley grow and overcome whatever problems she's going to face in Inside Out 2. Interestingly enough, Riley wasn't the only character in Inside Out that showed her emotions transforming to embody what they were feeling at the time. If you remember, during the end credits, the scene flashed through what everyone else's command centers looked like. Everyone had different setups with the 5 core emotions. Take the city bus driver, for instance. That man had everything that Riley had in terms of joy, sadness, anger, fear, and disgust, only in his case, all of them had the body of anger. This could imply that his emotions evolved and changed to suit how he really feels all day due to the rage he felt from his job. That being said, none of the adults seem to have more than the core 5 emotions, which is why some fans believe that the original 5 can take on the forms of other, more complicated feelings. Now, I know what you're thinking. How could the evolution theory be true? If fear was supposed to embody anxiety, why would it appear as a character in the new movie? Well, I wouldn't discard this theory just yet, because there's a chance that Riley's anxious feelings became too overwhelming for Fear to handle and eventually became its own emotion altogether. You see, the theory suggests that near the beginning of Inside Out 2, Riley will become so overwhelmed by anxiety that her psyche literally has to create its own emotion for it so that it can take over the command center. Whether it be because of something one of the core 5 or new emotions did, there's a chance that fans will see Riley go through something so embarrassing that it's borderline traumatizing. This would cause Riley's anxiety to spike, especially as she's going through puberty, which is expected to happen based on the big flashing red button from the movie trailer. And with the spike in anxiety, the emotion would be born and eventually be the one who, as Joy so lovingly put it, was making the console orange. Now, if you don't think it's possible for Riley to have such strong feelings of anxiety, all I can do is suggest that you rewatch the first film, because whether these theories prove to be true or not, there's no doubt that in that movie a lot of her actions and feelings were driven by anxiety, especially when fear was at the helm. So if Riley continued to live her life in a constant state of anxiety-based fear, there's a super strong chance that it would become a core emotion and slowly take over her psyche. The only question is, will Joy evolve into love and help Riley learn to live with her anxiety? What do you think about this theory? Is Joy going to evolve into love throughout the movie? And what about the other core emotions? Will they transform too? Be sure to let me know what you think in the comments below.